Well, hello. I am very honored to be here with all of you, and also maybe particularly honored to be here with the three of them who are looking at housing in different ways and applying different mechanisms of innovation in order to bring affordability to scale. Because right now I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but we're in dire straits. We're like 6.5 million housing units under what we need right now, and our households are being formed faster than we can bring supply to the market. And there just are so many pressures and constraints on housing in general that we really need innovators like these three gentlemen. So like I said, really excited. We want this to be as engaging and educational as possible. So please, we welcome questions at any time, maybe even interruptions. We kind of have a small group here in the room, so I want to make it as interactive as possible. I am also, like I said, we're going to be really fast-paced. We have a lot of stuff to cover. These guys are already scripted and to keep it really quick and interesting, but we also want to give you guys as much information as possible too. So I'm going to find out a little bit more about you guys as an audience, but first I want to do the introductions, starting with you, Joe.
Oh, I'll introduce myself.
Yes.
Is my mic working? Hello? Yes. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech, but also have been involved in modular prefab for years, for about 30 years. My career in research really started with the solar decathlon projects. I've done 5 solar decathlon projects every couple of years. The last 2, which won the International Solar Decathlon Europe competition in 2010, and the other one won the Solar Decathlon Middle East in Dubai a couple of years ago. Through those modular projects, they had to be modular because these houses are so high performance. The competitions are very, very difficult. And our strategy was we pre-build, we pre-wire, we get everything working on our own campus, and then we ship it out, and within a day on the site, it's up and running. And that has been the reason, for the success. Since these solar houses, I've been involved as a consultant with builders to move to work with these builders that are doing stick-built work and transitioning them over to off-site work. Really, compared to these guys, I'm working at a very small scale in baby steps, and kind of looking at the inefficiencies of the on-site construction process and trying to solve for those through the off-site. So I'll talk more later, but is that good?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Alexey?
Hi, so yeah, it's working. So I'm co-founder and chief innovation officer at Mighty Buildings. At Mighty Buildings, we innovate with material science, additive manufacturing, and we print basically building components and elements in the factories for the faster assembly and for the quality. My background, I have basically robotics and complex automation, but I relatively kind of like newcomer to the industry. Basically, my experience in construction and real estate is somewhat like 6 years. Before that, it was entrepreneur, mostly like starting the companies in Germany, Singapore, Eastern Europe, and the US. So total 6 companies, 2 successful exits. So I'm still learning. I would say I'm a quick learner. But yeah, we'll share like more achievements at by the way, our beautiful house in Desert Hot Springs over there that I'm proud of. Yeah, so Rick.
Thank you, Alexey. And he's being super modest because when you go on his LinkedIn profile, there's like 24 experiences listed and like 12 of them are current. So he's got his hands in a lot of things and knows a lot. We have a lot to learn from Alexey.
Hello, I'm Rick Murdock, and I've been in modular manufacturing for 46 years. Started it when I was 20 years old. I've loved it. But here recently, I really got involved in automation and robotics. And so I wanted to do an automation robotic wood construction plant. So I reached out to two people I have a lot of confidence in, and we formed a partnership, and we started the country's first fully automated robotic wood construction modular plant in 2018. Actually got up and started running that in May of 2020. And so that's what we're about. We are modular industry people. We believe in the speed, the accuracy, and the need for modular manufacturing.
Thank you, Rick. And you guys, the factory is mind-blowing. It is, I got to tour it a while ago, and if you saw me yesterday, I was wearing my Autovol t-shirt, which I love as well. But like I said, the factory is mind-blowing, and so if you're ever in Boise, you should ask for a tour. Okay, so getting to know you guys, how many of you are involved in real estate? Raise your hand. Oh, a lot. How many are builders? Not a lot. All right. And is this single family? No. Multifamily? All right. All right. Several. How about manufacturers? If you're involved in real estate. So you're investing in real estate. Raise your hand. All right. Well, you guys are in for a treat. Like I said, these guys are amazing. So we're going to start off with a speed round, which means that they have to have super quick, fast, one word, one sentence answers. You ready? No. Okay, true or false, and we're just going to go down the line. Joe, Alexey, Rick, okay? So true or false, we are preparing for 2023 to be better than 2022. Joe, go.
Depends on what happens.
Oh, whoa. Did you not hear the rules?
Okay.
Okay, and it was true or false?
True.
Okay.
Absolutely.
True.
What one word, I'm underlining that, describes what will be needed to address today's housing needs?
Industrialization.
Calibration.
Standardization.
Which stakeholder in the home building ecosystem will have the most impact on delivering the needed supply?
The developer.
Us.
Manufacturing.
What will be the biggest challenge meeting supply in the next year or 2 years? Rising costs, labor, lack of innovation, regulation, policy?
All of the above. But labor is a big issue.
Yeah.
I would say all of them, depending on where you are.
All but policy.
You're saying a special focus on policy. Yeah. Not except policy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Special focus.
How would you relate the words housing and factory?
Inseparable.
Nice.
I would say it's a future.
Sorry?
It's a future.
Yeah. Future.
Optimum building.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, we're warmed up. Okay. Joe, you've worn a lot of hats, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about all of them because you have a lot of things going, just like Alexey. But one thing in particular that, really relevant to this session and this panel right now is getting the cost down. So while average cost per square foot for construction right now across the country is close to $250. But you have a project that is a smart home and you're delivering for under $100 a square foot. And so I'm showing pictures of that. So how did you get there?
Scrutinizing the on-site building process. The inefficiencies there, there's so many. But then also developing little by little. It's been a lot of work. We've been working for 3 years on this to fine-tune it's a small scale, it's not like Rick's, but the assembly line to speed up the process, to make the process more efficient. The challenge, of course, with prefab is how you overcome the overhead costs of having a factory now and the overhead costs of transporting the modules to the site. But once you overcome that, you're golden, and it only gets leaner and leaner and leaner as you go and as you fine tune that process. One of the big benefits is to move away from the trades. You didn't ask if they're trades here, but to move away from these subcontractors, the trades, and bringing them in-house. And you know, when everyone's in-house, just the process is so much more productive. You know, you're eliminating, you know, overheads and profits of so many different companies. You're solving problems of delays, you know, when a sub doesn't show up, or when they see something, especially with what I'm doing, they see something different, and all of a sudden, you know, it's $5,000 more. You know, it's like, no, it should be less. It really should be less. So anyway, right now we're apples. We're trying to get to the apples to apples, but then the added benefit can be all of the advantages to being in a factory, which is the ability to now install, you know, to have tighter buildings, to install more technology, to have greener, you know, houses, right? It's an ideal environment.
Yeah, so in the picture here, how many of you have seen a modular or been involved in a modular prefab project? Okay, so a majority. Okay, great. So how complete is that unit that's being dropped down by the crane right now on the picture?
That's about 80% when we're done. It's right now we're producing one townhome in 2.5 weeks in the factory, and then we have probably a 1 week period to complete the project.
So it only takes a week after that is all set in place.
And to do 4 townhomes right now, we're cutting 2 months off the production time, which the Van Meter company I'm working with are thrilled to death with that.
Yeah. So when you say the townhomes, just give us a scale. I mean, I can kind of see how big it is, but just kind of like how much space is that?
3-story, 2,800 square foot townhome. It's designed to be in 12 components. We try to complete as much as possible, especially the kitchens and bathrooms, to get it to where, I mean, everything's complete. You know, the advantage Rick has with these volumetric is everything in there is pretty much finished from the inside. And that's kind of the goal, is to start from the ground up. You can't go in and slice and dice a modular project. You have to really think about the design. You know, the designers have to understand how this building is going to go together, you know, as you're designing it. So it's just very efficient.
Yeah, and then when you're on these job sites too, and I guess a lot of you probably already know this because you've been involved in these projects, but when you're on this job site, there's literally no scrap at all. Like there's no waste on the job site at all. So Alexey's working on something that's a little bit unique as well, and you're using 3D printing in a new way to solve for design and efficiency and sustainability. So I'm gonna play this video that shows some of your process while you're telling us a little bit more about Mighty Buildings and how you guys are operating.
So in our operation, we actually, as I said, so we introduce a new material, and I believe in a way of kind of like, you know, what if we use way less material to deliver the same results? So meaning, first of all, like additive manufacturing, meaning we add materials so there is like zero waste from a get-go. Second one is our proprietary make is concrete free. So there is no concrete, there is no water needed, there is less energy needed just to have the same results. Another thing is the material, we already have like, you know, a few generations of the material. And it's a natural water and air barrier. So whenever we ship the panels to the site, there is nothing needed to apply on the exterior to get to the weatherproofing. So within 5 work days, we literally can assemble a fully sealed exterior envelope, and then the subs can finish interiors. So that's how I think about the process and how to deliver more and more units. And another thing, like, you know, the material is very lazy transmitting heat and cold, so our interior is connected to exteriors through the joints, but it's still very efficient. So all our developments are zero net energy. And On top of that, like we use additive manufacturing, but it's only one piece of the process. We actually have like robotics to mill the surface to make it like precise, and we also do like automatic put in insulation and the coating, similar to automotive industry. I think you have like similar process, but with traditional materials. Another thing that we allow is designers to have way more freedom in terms of what they can design, because for me, create like straight panel, or like some complex geometry or something else is the same cost. It's basically material and machine time. And designers have like full spectrum of freedom. So that's.
What are they doing with that freedom? Like, what have you seen that's different, or what have you guys been able to apply to the design?
So again, getting back to like eliminating some of the operations that needed on site. For instance, some of the headers, we can pre-print the headers as an extension of the panel just to hide some of the roof cassette beams, for instance. So it's literally simplify the process, and then it's reduced in hours from on-site work. That's how we can achieve this, 5 work days assembly for single-family homes that we deliver right now. That's one of the things. Another one is to use panels to it's going to be like we plan to deliver it later this year, but we're changing the design of the panels on the exterior, so homes can be different, basically from geometry perspective. Another thing, for instance, within the panel, it's more like less for the architects but more for engineers. We can pre-route the cold joints and for heat to travel longer, to have a longer path to travel. So meaning within the same limitation, the wall can be more efficient from thermal perspective, which is where, as I said, less material to deliver the same result. That's what motivates us, what drives us, our sustainability.
So you said, Alexey, that your father and your grandmother were very influential mentors for you. What would they say about 3D printing, or how invested are they?
By the way, I never asked them about 3D printing. Yeah, that's interesting. Look, I think in terms of 3D printing and how we came up with this was more about dreaming what we can do with the biggest 3D printer in the world. That was one of the conversations 6 years ago that transformed to become mighty buildings. But to answer to your comment, my grandma and my father, they were always pushing my kind of comfort zone in terms of how big I can dream, and they were always supportive. So that's why I kind of keep pushing the envelope all the time, and that's my kind of my problem, I would say. We
love it. We're all benefiting from it. So thank you. All right, and thank you to your grandmother and your father. Okay, Rick, across the country, you're we already talked about. You guys are in Boise. You are working on multi-story projects with the most automated process in the country. You really invested in the social impact, and you take I've met so many people that work with you, and they adore you, and they adore your drive to providing more affordable solutions. So I'm going to play your video while we listen to you talk about what Autovol is up to.
So we have really invested in the affordable housing sector. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at 255 units in San Jose, California. And it's a beautiful project done very well through a developer partner of ours. This is one of the models. So you can see through the interiors are very nice models. Absent the furniture, the interiors are delivered just like you see. And what most people don't realize is this is built in our factory. So our factory is 400,000 square foot. This is what we produce every day. We produce modules on average about 800 square foot. You can see the robots taking the heavy lifting off people, and people instructing the robots to work for them. And so out of that, you get accuracy, you get the precision with that. And then you see our folks here all joining in, assembling everything, finishing everything up, and then going through the end of the line, and we button it all up and get it ready to ship. This happened to have been a milestone with us, and so we marked it, had all of our people out there come in and sign off on it, and this is the building as it's being constructed. So they're being delivered on flatbed trailers to the site and then craned into place one module at a time and then wrapped up for weatherproofing. And then what's left to do on this building is the exterior siding, the corridors, and the roofing. Everything else has been completed.
So how much is a factor? We were just looking at all of the modules sitting out in the parking area, I believe. How much is transportation part of the equation?
It's a huge part. Every project has to be delivered through transportation. And so here's what's amazing. We can build in Boise, Idaho, this building that you've seen here. We can transport all these modules to the site and get those craned in set and still save them roughly $100 a square foot. So everything has to be shipped. And then there's a lot of logistics. Everything has to be planned out from the time that you start production to the way they want it delivered. They're working on the site, getting the site prepared. They're getting all that stuff done. And then they hit the go button on transportation. We ship in the order that they're going to set. And as the modules arrive, they're put in storage, and then they're all moved up, undressed, and put on a crane and stacked as quickly as possible. So we've had very much success. Our last project that we did, just to give you an idea, was 102 units that went into Northern California. And from the time that we started building the project to the time that the building was set out and ready for exterior finishes was 4 months. And that's a 4-story building in Milpitas.
Would you be able to say how much the cost per square foot is?
The cost per square foot on that was in the 150s.
And how about you, Alexey? Can you tell us what your cost per square foot is?
Right now, our cost is 300, 350, depending on the finishes. But you know, that's the material that we build with is technically synthetic stone. So it's, you know, the longevity of the material more than 50, 75 years.
Awesome. So I did put up that QR code, and that was a question that came from somebody. So thanks for sending in the question. If you guys have more, you can just send them in. I'll be looking at that. So Alexey, and we're talking about cost cutting, right? So collaboration is a huge part, and that's why we're here. That's why we're having this panel here. We want to have a different perspective on it. We want to be talking to different people, talking to everybody who's part of the overall ecosystem. Alexey's done a really good job of that in terms of being able to work on the supply chain and supply chain issues. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Your numbers are pretty astounding.
On the supply chain side, first of all, like the material that we use are basically the supply chain is a little bit outside of the construction sector, right? So that's one of the advantage, and it's basically allow us to, for instance, to keep the cost more or less like at the same level when the rest of like more commodity materials went like skyrocketed a while back. So that was like, you know, huge advantage. Another thing is, the part of our design and what we're pushing all the designers and architects to have is increase the percentage of prefabricated elements in the design that they use. So for instance, use roof cassettes, bathroom pods, I mean, all like kit of parts approach, so that any design can be created based on this, you know, our 3D printed panels together with some roof cassettes and the connectors that are already predefined. And they all designed based on with the idea of how to quickly assemble them. And the key component is always, obviously, is like, you know, to have the specs and not get locked in by one supplier. That's kind of like requires some negotiation, but typically we keep always keep the process of having like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, just to have like more diverse like supply chain, so that, for instance, that someone cannot meet our timeline, we still have like someone who can step in and deliver. That was very important for us.
Anything to add on that?
Well, I want to ask you, you were explaining your process. Where do systems fall in the line, like the MEP? I just noticed you said bathroom pods. So
bathroom pods, roof cassettes, that's, you know, typically is a requirement for designs, like whenever we engage architects and engineers to do that. As of now, we don't have much of that MEP coming through our panels. That's going to be the next revision, the next generation that we're going to put for certification. And again, like, pushing the envelope of how I see it in the future. So right now, we're actually working on exposing the interior. So imagine the panels that can be shipped on site from interior to exterior. It's fully finished. Nothing should be done. It's just assembly and like sealing the seams. Next step will be is like to put, like we spoke about low voltage wiring, right? So as a part of the assembly of the panels, right, the connectors can be easily connected, right? All the high voltage kept in bathroom port, in kitchen, and the mechanical room. That's enough for 90% of the buildings, like 90 something. And that's where we're heading. So we plan to actually pre-route all, for wiring, for all the MEP inside of the walls, so that we deliver truly end-to-end, fully finished product on site with, and that's becoming like a Lego blocks for assembly.
And is your goal to be a standalone builder, or are you? This is a question for the audience. Or compete with Lennar and D.R. Horton, or be construction partner only?
No, we are not a builder. We don't want to play this game. We like initially, like more than 4 years ago, I remember pitching from the stage. We're always saying like, what we're building is we're building a better solution for the industry. Builders are like, the industry is about the builders. So if the builder can deliver faster using our solution, our technology, our material, our what we can build in the factories, then the industry will strive and will be like, that's how we solve the supply chain, supply issue. I'm not saying like we are right now cost competitive at this point. In some regions we are very cost competitive, right, and some not yet because of the scale. But on the other hand, like we are very competitive in terms of how fast we can deliver, how hard they can units, and the owner can go into this building and become like a homeowner. That's what's fascinating, and that's big. But it's not us to become a builder. For instance, our break even. So we have 2 factories right now. One in Oakland, another one in Monterrey, Mexico. We have another factory coming up that probably will be unveiled like somewhat next year. And we can deploy factory within 4 months from the moment we get the keys to, let's say, like building like that, to the moment the first set of panels gonna come out of the building to be delivered to the site. And the return, are basically, the break even is 300 homes, pretty low, 300 homes.
Wow.
So any builder, any developer, or most of the case who has a volume like 300 plus throughout the year can afford this. And it's very easy to structure. So that's how we think about the scale, how to get, by the way, to the global scale.
That's amazing. Yeah, so somebody did ask about how to bring it to Brazil, so I think he's answering that question. I think also you'll hear that with Rick's answer as well. So Rick, when we're talking about, we looked at the automation, we looked at the robots, and you also maybe could go in a little bit with what your other companies provide and kind of the quantifiable metrics that are behind setting up a factory and what goes into the payback with the automation and the systems that you have in place.
Thank you. So setting up a factory, there's several companies involved that we're part of, my partners and I. One of them is an engineering services company. Right, so it's really one that knows how to take traditional type buildings and scale those and to modify those into modular type buildings, really. So we call it modularization, right? We take that plan and then we're going to come back and modularize it so we can build out a manufacturing plant and get the same result that everybody's looking for. That company really provides that talent for us. It also provides the engineering talent and collects all the data that we need to feed all of our automation and robotics, right? And then they send that down into our other engineering team that really takes that data and uses it in order to instruct the robots what they would be doing on each one of those turns. We have another company that's is involved in building manufacturing plants. And really, when you go to build a manufacturing plant, the first things you need to know is, what do you want to build? What is your product? What is the product that you wish to build? What is the quantity of that product you wish to build? And what is the spec? And if you have those 3 items, then you can design a great manufacturing plant to produce the product that you would like to produce for your own buildings. And then probably least but not least, very important, is we really have a company that really focuses on culture. And I can tell you that the robots are cool, and it really is sweet to watch them and do all the things they do. But it's also a lot more important to realize that those robots don't do anything until people instruct them what to do and actually activate them. They're no different than a hammer or a saw that's sitting on a table until someone picks it up and tells it or uses it in a way to accomplish what its goals are. It does nothing. And so our company is focused on people. I would tell you that, yes, we're a construction company. Yes, we build buildings, but we're a people company. And our buildings is what we produce through our people.
And you call them?
Our people are called solutioneers. And we do that for a reason. We just don't think it's appropriate to refer to people that build companies as your labor force or your workforce. They're far more than that. They're the ones that's building your company. They're the ones that's helping you succeed. They're the ones that's taking it to the next level. They'll be the ones to determine whether it's profitable or a loss. And so we give them priority over everything we do.
And they're the ones that name the robots.
And our robots, if you noticed, had names. And that's because we brought our work family in and asked them to bring their children in. And we just had a little event where their children could name all the robots. And so some of the robot names may not make sense, but they do to us because it's a family member that named them. So.
I liked them. So, Joe, we're talking about people and the people element. You and as everybody knows, one of the biggest challenges that the industry is facing right now is labor in the workforce. You've been working hand in hand with the next generation of the industry, and I want to hear from you. How are they receptive to change, and what should this group, as leaders in the industry, be thinking about in order to leverage their talent to deliver more housing?
Well, I'm on the ground floor at the stick-built level, and I can't tell you how difficult it is with the idea of change. To go to these trades and say, hey, we're going to do something different, and how stubborn they can be and how difficult they make it. I mean, like I was saying, when you have something priced out or bid out, they all automatically just add thousands of numbers to it just because it's so different. Fortunately, with the company that I'm working with, the Van Meter company, they've always been an innovative company. The leadership has always been thinking 10 years ahead. And that's why we're working together. They saw me speak at some event, and they're like, "We've got to get Joe. We got to start working on bringing this off-site." They had tried one project before; it wasn't too successful. But anyway, it's their vision that keeps this going. And whenever I have problems, I can go to them and say, "Look, things just aren't working out. We need to go a different direction," and they say, "We're going to do that." So the workforce.
I'm curious, so you are working with a lot of people who are in the industry and have been in the industry for a long time because you've got these various projects going.
Yeah.
And then you also have students. And so your students are designing and building the solar decathlon home and everything. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between the two, and how can you kind of give our audience an insight about that generation that's coming up and how they're looking at things differently and how they're kind of, solar decathlon is just an amazing project, has a lot of smart technology. It's sustainable, obviously. How are they looking at things differently?
Well, the best thing that we can do is educate, our young people and get them interested in innovation and how to build for the future. The move of solar decathlon away from building these houses. Now there are a lot of design challenges. I think this is a bad thing. I think to get architects working with engineers on a real project is the best education you can possibly get. Right? And so the students are seeing that you have to think differently, but they're also learning from the engineers and the profession. So I don't know. I'm trying to answer your question.
We'll come back to it. You
Yeah.
keep thinking on that, because I've got a question that I'm going to tie it in with my next question, but I got one that was texted to me about circularity. And so, Alexey, I know you're really focused on, so we're all thinking about ESG, and you're very focused on the E, the environmental aspect, as we all are. But when you're thinking about it, Alexey, how are you looking at the sustainability element of housing?
By the way, I think like the right focus should be on overall impact, and it might like ESG is more like a metric that should be done like in any organization, because I think like all of us can play the role on the government's pushing the rights initiative that's gonna not only help the business but also like help other on create the rules so that or regulation that's gonna for modular, for prefab, it's gonna be make it easier. On environmental side, like one thing is to think about it from a design, like early on a design stage, starting with, for instance, design for the assembly or what's going to be the end of life. Also working with the supply chain. In some cases, we have a scoring card for every supplier to fill out and send like EPDs to us. Then we do the reviews and we understand like, and also for sustainability, or for instance, like LCA analysis, life cycle analysis, it should be embedded into the process. So whenever we present and that's what, by the way, why we are, as a manufacturer, we're decoupled from a developer, so we're not making these decisions. We're actually presenting to the developer different solution and saying like, okay, switching to this material, this supplier will cause this kind of like, either cost increase, decrease, but also like what's going to be the carbon footprint of it. And in some cases, like they might see that, okay, it's slight increase, but the drastic decrease in terms of carbon footprint, and that might be like okay for them. So just having this infrastructure, I think, is very important. And that's how we think about it. Like, first of all, making calculations right. Then second one is to track them over the lifetime of the product. The product is a home. So how we can, for instance, as of now, for zero net energy community, we need to get back to this in a couple of years to basically track the data and be able to prove it, right? I mean, we have a claim and we have a reputation of our engineers, not only our engineers and external engineers who calculated that everything should be zero net energy, but how it's like, what is the buffer for the climate change, for what's going to happen in a few years, and we need to make sure that what we're claiming is actually going to be true. Even like a few years later. And that's very important. The same about like the circularity in terms of how we can reuse the panels that we printed after like, 50 years, 70 years, or 100 years. We're working on it. It's still like, not kind of like the use case because the company is only 6 years old. It's not like 70 plus. But reusing of our panels is possible, for instance, for warehouses and so on. That's something that we're actually exploring in one of the regions right now. We'll see. So probably like, a topic for the next session in a year or so. Yeah.
So there seem to be more questions. I think you just answered another one that was talking about how we're measuring the carbon footprint. I think and just from my experience and the various things that I'm involved in, there's a lot of carbon calculators out there, and it's something that the industry at large is trying to still wrap their arms around, but it's still hard to grasp at the moment. And I know that there's a lot of effort behind it right now in order to make sure that that is a factor in everything new built. There's guidelines that are coming out from the United States Department of Energy in the next month or so that will teach the industry how to get to zero carbon aligned with all new construction and going back and retrofitting everything actually that's existing in the US. But anyway, so it's still something that's being developed. It's a work in progress. During the pandemic, there were a lot of supply chain issues. Starting with you, Rick, so how are you thinking about, what challenges did you have? And then how are you creating resiliency within your supply chain structure in order to make sure that you don't have those issues or challenges in the future?
There was some challenges there, but we were very fortunate. We approached our manufacturing facility a little bit differently is we really reached out and built relationships with our key suppliers. And it wasn't going to seeing who could supply the cheapest product and what day they could supply it, and is this guy a little bit cheaper than that one? It was far more than that. We actually invited them in. We let them understand who we are and what we were there for, and then we wanted to understand what they needed from us in order to help us be successful. And so we built relationships, and it was relationships for them to know that if we're building a project, they're a part of it. And then we moved in with their help into standardization, and we looked at what areas with the products that we were building that we could standardize, right? And that doesn't mean that everything looks the same. That just means your components are standardized, and they're coming to you mostly finished, some of them not mostly finished, but they're the same as you did the last time, because what creates efficiency is standardization, because you don't have to re-educate yourself every time you do a build. And so they understood that. And then when we were able to start standardizing many of the things that we were doing across our builds, they knew they had to have it. And they knew that our next build was going to have the same product, and this one was going to have the same product. And so they were anxious to bring it in, make sure we had it in the time we needed it. If they needed to store it themselves, so we would have it when it was available, they did that as well. And then we stored it at our manufacturing facility as well, too. So standardization really helped us out quite a bit in building relationships with our suppliers, just like we have with our family at the plant.
So can you guys answer as well, but maybe with a twist, is...
Well, different. What we're doing is we just bought a whole new warehouse where we can stockpile the materials we need, so we don't have that slowdown if there is a shortage or a delay in the material.
But then you're stuck with those materials.
No, because there's continuous production. They have no end to the volume. I mean, they just need to build faster. They don't have a problem with sales. Yeah. The biggest problem they could have is running out of drywall or not getting the windows they need. So to be ahead of the game and just to make sure there's enough shock,
Did anybody replace a product, substitute?
Yes.
Find an alternative?
Yes.
That's ongoing. You're always looking for a different product for many reasons. First of all, is availability. Second of all, is there a better product that takes less labor to build? Is there one that's going to last longer? If there's one that fits the need better? And so, especially when you're working with automation every day, you're looking for a different type of product or a better product to use with your automation systems in order to make sure that you always have that. But we were able to, it was amazing actually, we were able to do as you said. We repurposed things. We brought in different types of materials and kept our standards the same. But what was amazing is that we've been in business now and fully operational for 3 years. And we've not had one material shortage since we started. We haven't had one building built without a part that was 100% complete. We've moved nothing out our doors incomplete because of our mobility and the products that we use and our relationships.
One of the things we were talking about earlier is the importance of setting up that assembly line. So there's no slowdown. Some of the inefficiencies of on-site work is you're not completely able to monitor 100% production. You can find the guys. What did you say? 50-60% of the time is actual work. But what we found is the efficiency of once you come in and start building modules, like we're building our trusses and panels already, the efficiency is so much greater.
So, Alexey, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I 100% agree. Relationship are very important, like with suppliers. Another thing is, in some cases, we prefer to engage suppliers to collaborate with us in terms of how to squeeze out how to simplify the assembly process, addressing their needs and our needs, because we know that they can push the envelope of what they can do, and they actually, a lot of suppliers, specifically big one, they're willing to do so. And that's additional, it's a huge investment in a building relationship. And once we're there, getting more and more suppliers okay, we need these requirements. For instance, how to build the frame so it's easy to install the windows together with our 3D printed panels. That's one of the topics. The same can be done for doors. The same can be done for roof cassettes. And once we build this relationship, they they're willing to commit and deliver on the timeline that we signed them off.
So a question just came in, and these are certainly not apples to apples, but basically saying, what is more efficient, what is more effective? Is it 3D printing or is it modular construction?
Well, I think it's it depends on application. First of all, we can produce a volumetric module with 3D printing. So it's still going to be efficient, right? And at the same time, we can print panels and assemble like a volumetric module in the factory and then ship it. Again, volumetric. And we can ship the panels to the sites. It all depends on the use case and what the project. Like for some developers, it's actually, it's just impossible to deliver the modules. You know, we had customers in, I remember like in Tahoe area, and the only viable option for them to deliver something volumetric was through helicopters. It was super expensive, but they, like, you know, the customer actually went through the process to get these numbers. It was like fascinating. But my point is, it's like what we do, 3D printing and the method. So when comparing 3D printing and additive manufacturing, what we do is comparing to basically how we assemble the panels, to sheet panels, to like, you know, wood framing or precast concrete. That's where the comparison should be. What we can do with this technology, it's a little bit different question. Like we can do volumetric in the factory, like finish it up, like, you know, to 100%. So it's going to be dropped as a volumetric, fully finished unit, PPVCs, remember, right? Mm-hmm. Or like, again, the technology that we're building with the materials, with additive manufacturing, it's more about like, you know, having freedom, being able to produce panels, being able to produce like, you know, corner segments, being able to produce like volumetric modules for bathroom or like in the whole room units. Because I mean, let's say a room like this, impossible to do like with a volumetric form. I think it's possible, but
it's not possible.
No, it's possible. It's going to be very expensive.
Yes, it would be
very expensive. Yeah. So like room like this, it makes sense to do with panelized construction. While let's say, I don't know, like you know, bathroom, it's literally like possible to do probably with volumetric module.
Yeah. Alexey, what I appreciate about what Alexey does, and he's the first 3D printing company, you know, that I've come across that's doing panelization and prefabricated components. They're not printing concrete houses where you bring this huge gantry carrying out and you're printing something that, to be honest, I think it's more of a gimmick, right? Right now, I don't think 3D printing concrete buildings on site is ever going to take off. It's just there's too much complications with it. But what he's doing is just the same as what I'm doing. It's just he's 3D printing his components and we're stick building them. And both ways are very efficient. We've explored additive manufacturing with 3D printing. Like we did a bathroom sink in one of our research houses where we're printing the drains, the supply lines, all within the sink basin. You know, so it's more like a product, a manufactured product. And now these individual pieces are then brought to the site and installed.
I think one of the things I appreciate about that question is because all of it's necessary and all of us do something different. And every time we're doing something different, it's a key ingredient to changing things, changing the way it's always been done, trying to make things better, more efficient and less costly. So I would tell you that modular manufacturing isn't for every building. There's a lot of buildings out there that it does not make sense to modular build. If you were going to go out and build a bunch of custom buildings everywhere, modular build would probably not be your best choice. I like the panelized versions. I like what each and every one of these folks up here do because they're taking a piece of it, and that's really what you need is choices based on your situation, right? And we've got guys up here that's offering all those different choices so we can be successful.
You know,
I just want to add a small comment, by the way, to what you're doing, and I like you know, connected to supply chain. Actually, just imagine like pre-printing some of these like, you know, small elements. It's going to be available in the factories like yours, right? Yes. That's where like resilience of the supply chain is going to be, because like I think when I think about the material and people bring knowledge, right? You cannot do anything with the material that's going to be in the factory on the site without the knowledge. right? So in this case, like if the governments approve, like let's say pre-printing some of the, MEP structure or some of the connectors, and we have obviously like, this method is going to be more expensive compared to like, mass manufacturing from a big suppliers. But if they're not able to deliver on time, you have an option. Yeah. And that's how like the resilience of a supply chain actually becoming a reality for anyone like, with a bigger factory with a small.
There is a startup out there that has a trailer that goes to the job site and 3D prints.
Yes.
Amazing.
Components.
Components, yeah. Go ahead, Joe. You had something to add?
Just an example of, thinking on your feet, Rick is doing these very large scale projects where the transportation costs, which are high, it's not really a problem because you have the volume that can offset, that cost of transportation. Well, we don't have that luxury when we're doing single townhomes, one at a time here, and we can't afford to spend $10,000 to deliver one townhome. You've already lost the game, right? Because the numbers are so tight. So thinking on our feet, we figured out that we don't need, because we're dealing with pod and panel, so smaller size components, we don't need flatbed trailers. We're using the hotshot trailers that can be hauled with pickup trucks. So one delivery went from costing $5,000 to $500. One townhome delivered for $3,700. And it's amazing. And that right there, that discovery right there just makes it, right? That makes it, now everyone is thinking, oh, this really has a chance. Because, $50,000 to deliver a townhome.
So you guys are amazing as an audience. My phone is blowing up. There's so many questions in here that I just cannot keep track. But I promise to tap these guys after the session too and get and answer a lot of these questions. I think one of the questions was just answered about, custom luxury homes. I think we kind of answered that with what we were just talking about. I missed it. Okay, financing. So I think that's an important part because I think a lot of you in the room are talking about investing or are investors in some capacity. So financing, it actually is turned a little bit on its head in terms of modular, and there's also different policies. So there was, let's kill two birds with one stone. Someone asked about policy for modular, and somebody asked about financing and your projects. So how is it different? What kind of obstacles are you guys coming up against? Joe, do you want to start? I'm not sure how much you're going to pass it over to that. Okay.
So the question was financing the project?
Financing and policy, how it's different because you're a modular project.
So financing is different because it's a modular project, because we do it almost opposite of what you do in traditional construction. Traditional construction, it's kind of pay as you go. As you're financing a project, you're having things delivered, you're working on that, then the next delivery, and so you're kind of financing as you go and making payments, as I call it. In modular construction, it's not that way because you're having to bring all your inventory into the manufacturing facility before you can start production. Right, so the difference is instead of pay as you go, if you looked at your size of your project, 20% of that cost is going to be up front. Okay, the upfront cost is to bring in all the materials for that project, right, and store them in your facility or have someone store it with you in your facility, and so that you have access to all the materials you need while you're manufacturing. The reason for that difference is this: a manufacturing plant is a moving line. Right, and so you've got a number of stations that are going through a modular line, and each one of those stations has a scope of work that has to be done in that station. Then it moves to the next, and that's how you have all these different trades working at the same time on the same building. So imagine a disruption in materials. Imagine that your materials aren't in the plant when you come down and you need it, right? So you got two choices. You either build it with a material shortage and continue your plant rolling through the line, right, which disrupts every department in the plant, or you stop, which takes you dark, and then all of a sudden your people are waiting so they can go back to work, right? So it's very important to have all this material there because that's where you're going to be most efficient, that's where your cost is going to be the lowest, and that's where you're going to have the consistency all the way through the build to delivery, and that's how you meet your delivery times. That's why in modular manufacturing, if you want a product and you agree to deliver it to a certain date, it is always delivered on that date because it's finished and ready for delivery. Traditional construction, we all know that projects seem to linger and then move out and move out and move out, and what was supposed to take 18 months ends up taking almost 3 years to complete. And with that 3 years is additional cost in each one of those things because you're offsetting everything. Manufacturing's done a little bit different. The financing piece of it, the reason why that's accepted is I think that financing that, you have less risk. All your materials are in one spot. They're in a controlled environment. They're all under roof. They're not laying out into a field, scattered everywhere. There's no way to, I guess there is a way, but it's least likely that even theft is going to happen. All your materials are secured. And for those that don't realize it, they do not make a construction material that is supposed to be stored outside. None. Right? And so this is all preserved in there. So if you look at your risk, all your materials there. If you want to walk in the manufacturing plant, you could touch it, feel it, look at it. It's there, it's secured, it's under roof, and you know that it's going to be used. And so financing is a little bit different. And then as you start production, you start coming off the line with your product, you're getting paid for that product. Right? And so you're already securing your product long before it ever hits the site. And why is that? Modular manufacturers aren't contractors. They're suppliers. They're suppliers no different than I receive a load of lumber or a load of tubs or whatever. We are producing a product and we're delivering that product. So we're a supplier of that product. And so that's the difference that I think I see in the financing end of it.
Yeah, awesome. These questions are fantastic, and I'll try to get with these guys and answer them and send you guys responses. And then on your app, there's also a survey to fill out if you to rate the session, if you guys can get in there and do that. And right now, I have a final lightning round. All right, so 3 more. Same rules, Joe.
She's tough. I feel like I'm back in school.
Name one thing about housing challenges that you haven't figured out that you are dying to understand better.
Oh my gosh. It's not what I'm dying. I'm dying to understand how to make it work as best as it can possibly work. And in the last several years doing this, I'm just amazed at everything I discover every day. And I'm very optimistic about where it's going and where it's going to end up.
I'm dying to see actually how policy is going to support affordable housing to make it really affordable. Because from construction perspective, we can drop the cost down quite drastically, and speed of delivery can be we can do it. But to market affordable will still require a lot of legwork and policy to step in.
And I'm very much in with Alexey. Understanding why don't we have the policies that can move housing through? Why does it take so long in order to approve and develop housing?
So is there anybody in the room that works on policy so we can all stare at you? Are you too afraid to raise your hand now?
There is one thing that
oh, you so failed us.
Message to everyone is we can also learn how to live smaller. We don't need the sizes of houses that we have now, and often we address affordability. And really, is affordability going to come in construction cost? No, usually it's the developer or builder. It's going to make more profits with that. The real solution is to build smaller houses so that the cost comes down. You sell them for less.
Yeah, really good point. Okay, so best piece of advice you received on sticking with the industry?
I'll pass since I used my time.
Good one. Best piece of advice, I think, I received at a certain point, I was kind of previously I designed consumer electronics, robotic solutions, which is fascinating, very complex, but from engineering perspective, homes and houses is also very complex from a number of things that go in there, together with regulation. But they're all different and should meet variety of requirements. So it's a product with a certain customization that literally needs to meet the requirement, the desire for the customer who's going to be living there. So it's not using the product, but it's more be within it. So people spending life there, in these buildings. That's what fascinated me. And I think like I remember just had this conversation like 5 years ago, and I still prefer to stick with it. Doesn't matter like what the obstacles are, but that's why I'm so passionate about construction tech, real estate technology. You can see like I'm investing in these categories quite drastically, and that's what's amazed me.
I think what encouraged me to stay in the industry is the fact that housing is such a need, and it's always going to be a need.
Okay, so sticking with you, Rick, one call to action to the audience.
I'm glad this doesn't have to be one word.
Oh, it does.
Oh, it does.
It's a call to action. It has to be short, punchy.
It's action. Here's what I would tell you, that everyone needs to have an address, and everyone can make an impact on letting people have an address. So talk about it, speak about it, let people know there's options.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I would stick with collaboration. I think it's crucial for everyone to be like, transparent and be open to the conversation and just to collaborate. Even like, making sure that there is so many ways to compare one project over another, like one solution over another, but, sit together, be transparent in terms of what our goal are. Because if we agree, like, what is the destination, then if we invest in this trust, like, it's only a question of, like, we're going to get there, right? And it's just to have right people at the table. So collaboration is very important.
I'll stick to live smaller. We don't need these huge houses. And I've recently, I'm working on a 560 square foot house, and I've been spending time in there, and it's extremely comfortable. And I don't have all the clutter, so if I can convince my wife to move in.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sticking with us. Really appreciate you guys being here, and help me thank these guys for sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.